Hello, welcome to part 2 of our Katarina Basics Guide. Reminder that this is game version 4.2. In this part, we're going to talk more about strategy and go over some basic game plan elements which will build on the essential tools we already went over. We'll also suggest some players to check out and cap it off with a brief character summary. Don't forget about all the resource links I mentioned in part 1. Those may be very useful to you, especially if you are brand new to the game. I've included those once again in the video description below. But enough of that, let's get going. You'll be using Cat's lone stance often for pressure. There are a couple of ways to do so, but first let's talk about the Harrier options quickly. Harrier 1 is your fastest option at I-12. It's a save high that gives the spin state on hit, which can also splat, or a knockdown on counter hit for a free follow-up. This is probably the option you'll use the most as both a check against buttons and stepping, and at only -3 you can still run setups afterwards. Just be aware of the duck risk. Harrier 4 is your next fastest tool at I-15. Knockdown bounce on hit, but at -9 on block, your turn is pretty much done. Still scary if they're ducking a lot, especially near the wall. Harrier 2 is only a little slower at I-18, -6 on block, but also -2 on hit, although that does mean it is safe, and on counter hit, it will launch. Harrier 3 and Harrier Up 4-3 represent your main raw mix-up threat, both being roughly I-27. Up 4-3 is a safe, low crushing power mid, knockdown on hit, juggle on counter hit. Harrier 3 is a low crushing power low that will knock down on hit for a free follow-up, but much riskier at -25 on block. You do have another safer power low in Harrier down forward 3, which is only -12 on block, +5 on hit, and will knock down on counter hit as well. However, it's I-23, so in order to make proper use of it, you really have to mix up the timings of your other Harrier moves. This means either delaying Harrier down forward 3 slightly to bring it in line with the speed of Harrier up forward 3, or delaying your other Harrier moves like Harrier 2 or Harrier 4 to bring those in line with down forward 3. Or you can mix it in on Oki since it hits grounded. Regardless, it's really important to get a read on your opponent's defensive timing to make this work. Now moving on, Harrier down forward 2-3 exists, but is mostly reserved for juggles since the reward is fairly low for the relatively high risk, given that the first hit is punishable on block, the second hit is duckable, and it's her only Harrier string, so you don't have anything to mix it with. Lastly, you have the Rage Drive, Harrier 1+2, which is basically a beefed up version of Harrier 2. It's a few frames faster, and on hit it goes into a big damage hit throw, and on block it gives a big +5 and forces them into crouch. You'll see it sometimes as a combo ender since the hit throw still happens in that scenario. The Oki you get after it lands is really good too, so you have the extra damage from it and you get to go right back on offense. Another option you have is to cancel Harrier entirely. By tapping any of the downward directions, she'll recover in full crouch. The Harrier animation still has to complete before anything will come out, but thankfully Harrier is pretty fast, so you'll see this a lot. In full crouch, you have a few basic but useful options. While standing 4 is your safe I-11 mid check. While standing 1 is a safe I-13 mid poke. While standing 1-1 is a natural combo that can go back into Harrier. Just be careful since the second hit can be ducked. While standing 3 is another safe mid poke, this time I-14. It's the exact same move as her standing 3, just from full crouch, so yes, you can play the same string games with it that you can with standing 3. While standing 2 is your prototypical I-15 mid launcher, -13 on block. Finally, you have full crouch down forward 4, which is a significantly faster version of her down forward 3+4, very much unseeable at I-17, although your opponent can of course react to you being in full crouch if they so choose. The trade for the faster speed is that it's also much riskier at -16 on block. Still a big threat, so you'll see Cats use it a lot to break defensive shells since it's really all she has for that. You can also do any of her upward attacks from full crouch like her hop kick, or you can crouch cancel into your neutral moves, so a lot to play with here. That being said, you can use Harrier in 2 ways. First, as a transition, all of which we've already mentioned at this point, like 1-1, down forward 1-1, and so on. Because of the big plus frames these all give on hit, this normally means a free mix-up opportunity unless they're really courageous, hence the reason you want to spam Harrier 1 if they're hitting buttons a lot. Although it should be noted both back 1 and down 2 into Harrier are +3 on block, so Harrier 1 still wins against most buttons there. Also remember that counter hit back 1 into Harrier 1 is a true combo and Harrier 1 splats, so yes, at the wall you have a safe 14 frame counter hit splatter, and if they're trying to duck Harrier 1, Harrier 4 is safe on block and will bounce, so very scary. The other way to use Harrier is to go to it raw with forward 4. Harrier startup is surprisingly fast, and given the distance it travels, going straight to it can be effective. Tracking can be an issue no matter what you do from Harrier, especially tracking to her left, but mixing up timings and cancels can help with that. Regardless, you don't have to go for constant mix-ups with Harrier. Simply using it for pressure or poking can yield a lot of reward and is far more common a strategy, but it all depends on your risk tolerance. Now that we've talked about Harrier, let's talk fundamentals. Kat can actually get a lot done with Harrier pressure, but doing Harrier raw takes time, and her transition tools don't have enough range for you to be spamming them far out, so your neutral game still needs to be on point. You can do a very simple style that involves heavy doses of jabs, magic fours, down forward ones, toe kicks, simple counter hit setups for down forward 4, and so on. Then wait for a chance where you can bring Harrier or full crouch while standing into play, or nab a whiff punish. But like every character, it's always useful to bring as much of your move list into play as you can. So with that, Cat strings can be good for a gimmick or two. Down forward 3-3 is an NCC mid-low that can be canceled into full crouch. Technically, your opponent can option select this by twitch ducking into some mid, but given that down forward 3 is I-15, you won't see that very often. But you still take on a ton of risk by finishing the string. Back 4 is a somewhat standard 2-hit string in that you have an unsafe mid-ender and a safe duckable high-ender. Both are natural combos, which is nice, and back 4 1+2 is also +1 on block. Back 4 3+4 could also be a lot worse at -12, however back 4 by itself is -15 on block, so you're somewhat forced to commit unless your opponent shows absolutely no signs of challenging it. Given that back 4 is a rangy counter hit launcher, it's nice if you can induce some hesitancy there. Unfortunately, even if you catch them swinging, the enders don't give anything special on counter hit. But speaking of gimmicks, you're going to have to get really creative with your lows in the neutral. If you want straight up skill checks, down back 3 and down back 4 are both reactable, high crushing lows that are incredibly unsafe on block, but they can be useful deterrents if your opponent is being far too predictable with their highs. However, you need to be very careful using them. Down 3 is an I-16 low poke, not much damage, but only -11 on block, 0 on hit, and has 2 string enders, an unsafe mid and a safe but duckable high. Both are risky unless you nab down 3 counter hit, in which case they both combo. However, what most Cat players will do is poke with just down 3 and see if they can bait a specific response. For instance, being 0 on hit, you can set up a counter hit or a sidestep afterwards. The second hit of down 3-4 will knock down on counter hit as well, or you can try catching them ducking. Either way, down 3 is a low poke we haven't mentioned, mostly because it's underwhelming and requires some tight reads to get real value. However, ironically, you'll probably have to use it a decent amount since she doesn't have very many low pokes. Literally, her only low pokes from standing are down 3 and her toe kick. Every other low is a power low and comes with a lot more risk. Although it should be noted that since she has solid full crouch tools and her toe kick has great range, her toe kick can be really good at running full crouch games. Full crouch down forward 4 in particular is what you should consider your main scary low. Regardless, all of this is just to get your creative juices flowing. You don't really have to use any of it. At the end of the day, Cat has one of the smaller move lists in the game, and a large part of what makes her good is using the simple, effective tools. The good news there is that her mids are extremely strong, not only in reward, but also in risk. Down forward 2-2, for example, is incredibly useful. It gives good reward, particularly at the wall, and is only -10. Many of her other stronger mids are just flat out safe. So playing just a simple, fast poke style mixed with some of the stronger mids while waiting for those whiff punishes or Harrier openings is a remarkably effective style. Given that it's not complicated, evidenced by the fact that most people believe her to be one of the easiest characters in the game to play, you'll catch on quickly. As always, we'll start by recommending Applay. It's the best quick info resource out there. Once you start to get comfortable with Tekken and you want to pick up a character on the fly, there's nothing better than this. Now, first, probably most prolific Katarina loyalist, Italy's Ghirlanda is a great resource. The streams are somewhat limited, but he's done a few Katarina guides and has a ton of tournament sets you can watch. You can even get direct lessons from him if you want to foot the cash. Now, second, a US player this time, 20Z's Joonya is a staple tournament player in the US circuit. Everyone knows his brother Shadow, but don't sleep on Joonya's ability. It is true you're likely to see more of his Eliza than his Katarina, but he's made a lot of strong tournament runs going back and forth, and again, because he's competed in so many events, there's an enormous amount of sets to watch. Lastly, as always, don't take this list as final. An oddly high number of high-level players have experimented with Katarina, Rangchu probably being the most notable. The two aforementioned guys are simply the most reliable, so search around and you'll certainly find more. This brings us to the end of our guide. Katarina is one of the easiest and simplest characters in the game, so if you're looking to pick up a character relatively quickly, she's your gal. That being said, simple and easy doesn't always mean bad. Katarina has a lot of really strong pokes and mids, some of the best in fact. Her punishing damage and range are also solid. Her biggest weakness is just the lack of usable lows and grabs, so you have to get really creative with full crouch down forward 4 in order to break good defenses. But Tekken is a game of buttons, and at some point your opponent will attack, so all of her good tools will come back into play. So keep at it, and I wish you the best of luck in your training. And with that, thanks for checking out this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications here on YouTube so that you get alerted when a new video drops. Twitch and Twitter links are also down below. Lastly, huge thank you to our patrons. The more support we have, the more resources we can devote to channel content. So again, I can't thank everyone enough for considering supporting the Patreon. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.